Hollywood sells a fantasy. It promises red carpets, movie stars, flashing cameras, and streets where history seems to glow beneath every neon sign. But step away from the carefully framed photographs and look a little closer. The paint is fading, the sidewalks are cracked, historic theaters sit dark behind locked doors. Buildings that once defined American entertainment now survive through restoration campaigns, corporate sponsorships, legal protection, or simple luck. Some of these places are physically deteriorating. Others have been repaired but lost the atmosphere that once made them special. And a few are standing in plain sight while their future remains dangerously uncertain. These are 10 iconic Hollywood landmarks that are falling apart or came frighteningly close. Number 10. The Hollywood Sign. Today, the Hollywood sign looks permanent, almost as though those enormous white letters have always watched over Los Angeles. But permanence was never part of the plan. The original sign was erected in 1923 to advertise a housing development called Hollywoodland. It was made from wood and sheet metal, illuminated by thousands of light bulbs, and expected to remain on the hillside for only a short time. Once the properties were sold, the advertisement was supposed to disappear. Instead, it stayed and began deteriorating almost immediately. Wind, rain, heat, and neglect slowly destroyed the structure. By the 1970s, sections of letters had collapsed, parts had been damaged by fire, and the once glamorous landmark had become a rusting skeleton above the city. Hollywood's most recognizable symbol had turned into an embarrassing reflection of the neighborhood below. In 1978, the original letters were finally removed. Private donors funded a complete steel replacement, with each sponsor paying for one letter. The sign standing today is stronger, reinforced, and regularly maintained. So technically, Hollywood's greatest landmark survived by being completely rebuilt. The irony is perfect. The symbol of Hollywood authenticity is itself a replacement, a carefully preserved image standing where the original quietly rotted away. Number 9. The Hollywood Walk of Fame. More than 2,700 stars are embedded along Hollywood Boulevard and Vine Street. Millions of visitors arrive every year to find their favorite actor, musician, director, or fictional character immortalized in brass and terrazzo. Then they look down. Many stars are stained, cracked, chipped, or faded. Some have missing pieces. Others sit beneath gum, dirt, spilled drinks, street equipment, and the shoes of thousands of people who barely notice whose name they are standing on. The oldest stars date back to 1960. They were designed as permanent monuments, but they exist in one of the harshest possible environments for preservation. A public sidewalk exposed every day to weather, construction, vandalism, heavy machinery, and endless crowds. The famous stars receive attention quickly when damaged. The less famous ones can deteriorate quietly for years, and the street surrounding them creates an even greater problem. Tourists often arrive expecting polished movie glamour. Instead, they encounter aggressive souvenir sellers, costume performers demanding tips, traffic, litter, and the unpredictable energy of a struggling urban neighborhood. That contrast may be the most Hollywood thing about the Walk of Fame. It celebrates immortality, but everything around it shows the effects of time. The stars are permanent, their condition is not. Number 8. The Egyptian Theater. When the Egyptian Theater opened in 1922, it did more than show movies. It helped invent the Hollywood premiere. The opening of Douglas Fairbanks' Robin Hood transformed the sidewalk into a spectacle filled with lights, cameras, decorations, and famous guests. Audiences were not simply attending a film. They were entering an event. The theater itself was designed to make that experience unforgettable. Egyptian-inspired columns, painted symbols, dramatic courtyards, costumed performers, and elaborate displays turned the building into a fantasy before the screen even lit up. But 5 years later, Sid Grauman opened his Chinese theater nearby. It was larger, stranger, and instantly more famous. The Egyptian slowly became overshadowed by the building that followed it. By the early 1990s, the theater had closed and was sitting vacant. Water intrusion, structural problems, outdated modifications, and years of limited maintenance threatened a building that had helped create Hollywood's most famous tradition. A non-profit organization restored and reopened it in the late 1990s, but the theater remained expensive and difficult to maintain. Eventually, Netflix acquired the property and financed a massive restoration that addressed the foundation's seismic safety, projection layout, and historic interior. The Egyptian is beautiful again, but its rescue revealed an uncomfortable truth. One of the most important theaters in cinema history required tens of millions of dollars from a streaming company to survive. The birthplace of the Hollywood movie premiere was saved by a business built around watching movies at home. Number 7. The Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. The Roosevelt opened in 1927 across from the Chinese Theater, backed by some of early Hollywood's biggest names. 2 years later, the first Academy Awards ceremonies was held inside its Blossom Ballroom. It was nothing like the Oscars today. The ceremony lasted only minutes. The winners were already known. There was no global broadcast, no endless red carpet, and no dramatic opening monologue. Over the following decades, the Roosevelt became part hotel and part Hollywood legend. Marilyn Monroe lived there early in her career. Montgomery Clift stayed there while filming From Here to Eternity. Clark Gable and Carole Lombard were frequent guests. Then came modernization. Beginning in the 1950s, owners removed arches, concealed decorative ceilings, altered historic interiors, and covered the exterior in seafoam green paint. A Spanish colonial revival landmark was treated like an outdated property that needed to be disguised. The building did not collapse. Something more subtle happened. Its identity was painted over. A major restoration in the 1980s used old photographs and architectural plans to recover much of what had been lost. Today, the Roosevelt remains open and protected as a historic landmark. But its story proves that neglect is not the only danger facing old Hollywood. Sometimes destruction arrives carrying renovation plans. Number 6. The Cinerama Dome. The Cinerama Dome opened in 1963 as one of the most futuristic theaters in America. Built from hundreds of concrete panels in only 16 weeks, the giant geodesic structure looked less like a movie palace and more like something that had landed on Sunset Boulevard. Inside, an enormous curved screen surrounded audiences with an image so wide that people in the front rows had to turn their heads to follow the action. For decades, the Dome was where filmmakers, critics, Academy voters, and serious movie lovers went to experience cinema as something physical and communal. The building did not simply contain the film. It became part of the film, but the technology that justified its unusual design gradually disappeared. Cinerama projection faded away. 70mm presentations became rare. Digital systems took over, and the theater's original purpose became historic rather than practical. Then the pandemic arrived. The ArcLight chain closed its theaters in 2020 and later announced that it would not reopen. The Dome went dark while proposed reopening dates repeatedly shifted. Its landmark status makes demolition difficult, but protection does not create a functioning theater. A historic designation cannot sell tickets, hire staff, maintain projection equipment, or switch the marquee back on. The Dome is still standing. For movie lovers, that is not the same as being alive. Number 5. The Hollywood Palladium. When the Hollywood Palladium opened in 1940, Frank Sinatra performed with Tommy Dorsey's orchestra. Over the decades, the venue hosted presidents, award ceremonies, televised events, and artists ranging from big band performers to Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, David Bowie, and the Beastie Boys. Its enormous maple dance floor once represented a particular kind of glamorous nightlife, formal, crowded, musical, and built around the idea that audiences participated in the evening rather than simply watching it. But entertainment changed. Large arenas took over major concerts. Specialized rock venues attracted younger crowds. The ballroom format lost its dominance, and by the late 20th century, the Palladium had fallen into serious disrepair. Demolition became a real possibility before the city designated a historic monument. Renovations returned it to active use, and concerts still take place there today. Yet the building now faces a different kind of pressure. Major residential development has been proposed around it, including tall towers that would transform the surrounding block. Restoration has been discussed as part of those plans, but in Hollywood, promises attached to development projects deserve careful attention. The Palladium survived the wrecking ball. Now it must survive the value of the land beneath and beside it. Number 4. Chateau Marmont. Chateau Marmont was designed to look old before it actually was. Opened in 1929 and inspired by a French chateau, the hillside building quickly became a private refuge for actors, musicians, writers, and anyone who needed distance from the studio system's watchful eyes. The hotel developed a reputation for discretion. Famous guests could behave badly, disappear behind thick walls, and trust that the staff would not turn every incident into a headline. Its history includes glamour, creativity, scandal, addiction, tragedy, and stories that remain deliberately vague. Jim Morrison reportedly injured himself attempting to move between balconies. John Belushi died in one of the bungalows. Generations of celebrities treated the hotel as a place where Hollywood's rules temporarily stopped applying. By the 1970s, however, the building needed major repairs. A careful restoration beginning in the 1990s preserved much of its worn, shadowy character instead of polishing it into something unrecognizable. But physical survival did not end its problems. In recent years, former employees made serious allegations involving workplace discrimination and harassment, leading to protests and celebrity boycotts. Plans to turn the hotel into a private members-only operation were announced and later withdrawn. The chateau has survived economic collapse, changing ownership, scandal, earthquakes, and shifting celebrity culture. Its greatest talent may not be glamour, it may simply be endurance. Number 3. Grauman's Chinese Theater. The Chinese Theater opened in 1927 as Sid Grauman's most spectacular creation. With its towering pagoda, red columns, carved dragons, guardian lions, and famous forecourt, it was designed to overwhelm visitors before they ever entered the auditorium. The handprints and footprints became its greatest attraction. Actors left signatures, shoes, cigars, fists, and personal objects in wet cement, creating a physical connection between Hollywood mythology and the people who came to see it. The theater hosted Academy Awards ceremonies and major premieres, including Star Wars in 1977. It survived ownership changes, earthquakes, seismic upgrades, corporate naming deals, and conversion into a modern IMAX venue. The building remains one of Hollywood's most visited landmarks, but the experience surrounding it has changed. Stand in the forecourt today, and the architecture competes with enormous crowds, commercial promotions, souvenir sellers, costumed characters, phone cameras, and the noise of Hollywood Boulevard. The theater is still impressive, but the carefully staged sense of occasion that Grauman created is harder to feel. Nothing has technically vanished, yet the atmosphere has been worn away by the very fame that helped preserve the building. Number 2. The Hollywood Warner Theater. At the corner of Hollywood Boulevard and Wilcox Avenue stands a theater that millions of visitors pass without realizing what it is. The Hollywood Warner opened in 1928 as Hollywood's first major movie palace designed specifically for sound films. It was built when synchronized dialogue was transforming cinema, and Warner Brothers wanted a theater that represented the future. For decades, it was a premier venue. Later owners renamed it, divided parts of the building, and attempted to keep it commercially useful as movie-going changed. Then the 1994 Northridge earthquake damaged the structure. The theater closed and never returned to regular public operation. A church used the main auditorium for several years, but after that ended, the building became largely empty. It is protected as a historic monument and listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Even so, restoration proposals have stalled, redevelopment plans have created conflict, and the marquee has remained dark for more than 30 years. This may be the clearest example on the list of how a landmark can survive legally while disappearing culturally. The walls remain, the audience is gone. Number 1. Hollywood Boulevard itself. Every contradiction on this list leads back to the same street. Hollywood Boulevard contains the Walk of Fame, the Chinese Theater, the Roosevelt Hotel, the Egyptian Theater, historic offices, old marquees, souvenir stores, new developments, empty storefronts, and fragments of nearly every era of the entertainment industry. It should feel like the capital of movie history. Instead, visitors often describe a place caught between tourism and neglect. The street carries enormous expectations. People arrive imagining studio-era elegance, but encounter cracked pavement, litter, encampments, struggling businesses, security concerns, traffic, and landmarks surrounded by attractions that feel disconnected from their history. There have been repeated cleanup efforts and redevelopment projects. New apartments have risen. Major companies have moved into the district. Officials and business groups have spoken about improving Hollywood before Los Angeles hosts the 2028 Olympic Games. But that creates one final question. Is Hollywood being restored for the people who live there and visit every day, or temporarily polished for the cameras? Because Hollywood Boulevard has always specialized in appearances. It can make decay look romantic, turn nostalgia into a product, and place a bright spotlight exactly where it does not want you to look. These landmarks are not all doomed. Several have been beautifully restored, others remain active and profitable. But nearly everyone survived a moment when demolition, neglect, bad renovation, financial pressure, or cultural irrelevance could have erased it. That is what makes old Hollywood so fragile. Its buildings were created to manufacture dreams, But dreams do not maintain roofs. Fame does not repair foundations. Landmark status does not reopen locked doors. And history cannot protect itself. The Hollywood people imagine still exists, but only in pieces. Some pieces have been rebuilt. Some have been renamed. Some are hidden behind scaffolding, corporate branding, and locked entrances. And some are waiting in darkness, hoping someone decides they are still worth saving before the lights go out for good.